Hello, everyone. Let me get my. Um, so, the first thing I'd like you to do is just make sure you have someone sitting in proximity where you can talk to them a little bit. As Joe mentioned, this is going to be interactive, and this is a big part of it. I was, in getting ready for this morning, I was talking to a friend, and one of my ideas that helps me when I'm getting ready for a performance is thinking how I want to feel after a performance. And so I'm going to tell you that in a second, but right now I would like you to turn to your neighbor. I would like you to make a sound, and I would like you to make a physical gesture which explains how you are feeling right now. So those instructions: make a sound and a gesture that explains how you're feeling to your neighbor. Beautiful, beautiful. So, okay, you passed the first test. Good job, good job, good job. So, today I wanted to feel, oh, I want to feel generous. I want to share some of the things that have been influencing my thinking and my singing and just my general well being. And I'd like to share with you some of the things that have been in my artistic orbit and also just share the stage with a wonderful colleague. So, Richard and I, we started at Peabody at the same time. So that makes us twins. Can you? However, this is the first time that we've actually been able to collaborate together. So thank you to Joe, and thank you to the team for bringing us together and allowing us to do this thing. So the goal of today is to source resilience. And I could stand up here and tell you why you would need that, but you probably already know if you listen to NPR on the way in, or if you've watched the news at all for the last 3 months. So this is a big kind of thing that we need right now, especially in higher education. And some of the tools that we're going to use are creativity, are improvisation, and these are tools that you bring with you, that you have every day. But sometimes we can fine-tune our tools a little better, and that's what the goal of today is. So I would like to start by singing some selections from my upcoming album. This will be released in August on Azaka Records. And I am so proud that I wrote the words for this. So I'm the librettist on this, which is very different than all the other albums where I've done what other people have wrote the words for and written the music for. So I collaborated with the composer Carlos Simon Jr., and I'll tell you a little bit more about that collaboration and how we met and how this came about. But I will say before we start that there's a very famous piece of music which you may or may not know by Leonard Bernstein, who you may or may not know. How many people know who Leonard Bernstein is? Okay, there was the Bradley Cooper movie. Have you seen it? All right, it was perfect. It got everything right. It left out a lot of details. So I went to Indiana University for my master's, and they would bring Leonard Bernstein in every year or so to do things, and there are stories going around those halls. So he's got this very famous song set called La Bonne Cuisine, or The Good Cuisine in French, and I've always loved it and was kind of inspired by that and inspired by food in general, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. So what you're going to hear are some recipes that have been set to music. But the first movement is prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you for this food that we are about to receive. Please bless the hands that planted. ask that you allow it to nourish our bodies and our souls, lest we forget those starving, stranded, and struggling. We ask all this in your holy name, and in every name you are the same. The second piece is called Salmon and Kale. You may not think to roast leafy greens, but high heat does magic on them, enhancing their flavor. Preheat your oven and rim your baking sheet. Toss kale and cabbage with oil. Don't be discreet. Season your salmon, nestle it in greens. Bake for 10 minutes, it's time to get obscene. Whisk zestively mown with juice you freshly squeezed. Drip the remaining quarter cup of oil in a crisp skin roll. Remove the salmon from the heat and have your guests approach their seat. Now drizzle dressing as they eat. What a fabulous treat! The third piece is Interlude. And the last piece from the set that we'll be performing today is called Mac and Cheese. Now, the vegan community has a special obsession with mac and cheese. If you do a Google search, you'll find hundreds of recipes, some with nutritional yeast, some with margarine, some with oil, some baked, some on the stovetop. I humbly lend this version from the Vegan Soul Food Guide as our recipe today. Pound of macaroni and 2 Yukon potatoes or spuds of any kind. 1 large carrot peeled and diced. That's nice. 2/3 cup of onion. Please don't forget the salt. Don't forget canola or grapeseed or peanut oil, whatever slick suffices. Of the garlic, dried mustard, and pepper. A dash of this and a touch of that, but don't forget the salt. And blend it, toss it, and bend it, stretch it, and smooth it, blend it, and send it into your oven. That's already hot and ready. Oh, you'll know, don't worry. Just don't forget the salt. Laissez les bons tons rouler, ma chérie. About. And it came about in pieces. But first I want you to think about what is your favorite meal to cook? What meal do you love getting the ingredients for, love getting into the kitchen for? And maybe you can also think about your favorite place to cook and your favorite place to make a meal. For me, this became really important when I experienced a vocal injury in 2018. So I experienced an injury and I didn't talk for 2 months. And it was amazing. I'll never forget. It really was. For someone who spends their whole life talking, it was really interesting to sit and not do that and to find some other form of self-expression and creativity. And there was a book that I had sitting on my shelf that I had not used because I was always on the go, but this book was called Martha Stewart's One Pot. I highly recommend, 10 out of 10. And that's where the salmon and kale recipe came from. And as I told you, the vegan soul food guide, that's where the mac and cheese book came from. Don't at me for cooking vegan, even though I had salmon in the first recipe. So I found a lot of regenerative properties in the idea of getting in the kitchen and being creative there. So we will fast forward from 2018 to about 2019, where if you see the lady with the cello, her name is Carrie. We went to school together for undergrad, and we've been fast friends ever since. And she runs a group called Carina Ensemble, which is based out of DC. And she wrote to me and she said, Carl, now that you're in the DC area, let's do something together. Let's get a commission from Chamber Music America. So we sent in our stuff, we got the commission, and then it was, okay, now let's do it. Who do you want to work with? Well, I'd met Carlos Simon Jr. at a National Association of Negro Musicians conference several years before. I asked him to send me his stuff. He did. I loved it. I put it on my album. So he's also based in DC. He teaches at Georgetown. And I thought, oh, this will be really great to get some DC synergy area going there. And so by the time we got the grant, it was 2020, and it was the summer of 2020. Remember how that felt? And Carlos said, okay, Carl, we have this grant. Now, what do you want to do? And I said, you know, Carlos, I am so sick and tired of being sick and tired. I want to do something that celebrates Black boy joy, that is fun, that has sensuality in it, that has humor, that has connectivity in it. And I happened to be in a spiritual writing class during that time. So a friend of mine organized this during the pandemic, and we'd get together on Sunday morning and we would just write for 2 hours and we'd share what we'd written. And I knew how difficult it would be to actually get the appropriate poems and maybe even the copyright and all those things. So I said, hey, you know, I'll just write it for myself. And I kind of improvised because I hadn't written poetry to be seen for many, many years since then. But I knew I had lots of ideas, and I knew that this thing that I loved, cooking, it was creative, it was revelatory, it was fun, and that's something that I wanted to do. And I also knew that I loved that Leonard Bernstein piece, which I mentioned before. So that's how this piece kind of came about, and I'm so excited with the results. And there are more pieces in the set, so you'll have to get the album when it comes out in August. So this was my lyrical improvisation, and you saw both phases of it. You saw the generation phase, and you saw that evaluative phase or the archival phase. Those are two phases that are associated with improvisation and with creativity. Well, there are a lot of scientists who are now interested in how the brain organizes this and what the possible benefits are. So this is from an article that was published from the NIH, National Institute of Health. In 2012, they looked at 12 freestyle rappers, and they looked to see how their brains reacted to conventional lyrics, ones that they had rehearsed and learned, and then improvisational lyrics, ones that they were creating on the spot over the same 8-bar track. And what they found was that there was a decrease in the part of the brain that is associated with self-criticism and evaluation. So this is the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. And there was an increase in the part of the brain that was associated with figure finding and with commonality finding and with factors that are related to any kind of shapes and figures. So this is the medial prefrontal cortex. You'll see where the warmer colors are. That's where the bold signals or blood oxygen level dependent signals were increased, and the blue areas are where those areas of the brain actually decreased in their function. So this has implications for understanding how we're able to create these ideas and to generate music as jazz improvers do, as jazz improvisers do, as lyricists do, as rappers do. Now, take a look at this photo here. Tell me what you see. You'll have to speak up. Right, they're trees, and what condition is their condition in? Right. There's some burnout going here, right? Clearly there was a fire in this forest that has burned through and affected the trees. Have you ever felt like this? Have you ever felt burned out after a day of teaching and maybe learning or collaborating or talking? This is something that I definitely feel throughout my career of navigating being a performer, being a teacher. And it's also something that I can feel if I don't go in to the workplace with a plan in mind for how I'm going to treat myself, and especially my voice. I'm a professional voice user. You, if you are in this knowledge economy, are a professional voice user. So that part of our voices, that part of our being can be really exhausted, but the whole thing can get exhausted. And through improv, you can find ways of self-regulating and even emotionally regulating. So this was a study that was done in the Netherlands, and they found that teacher stress is high. Surprise, right? But what they found a way in order to address that was this process called cognitive reappraisal. So that's simply looking at the same set of circumstances a different way. And this is something that we do in improv. We take one thing and we go with it and look at it as if it could be something else and lead to something else. And surely you've already done this in your teaching. So improv meaning without provisions. There have been times that you've been able to move past not having the provisions that would be ideal and recreate what you needed to do in order to get a result. And maybe you got better results in the process as well. There are some caveats with the survey and some interesting factors, as in less than 5 years for teachers, it was harder to activate these strategies. But teachers that worked for more than 5 years found a lot more success with emotional regulation and with their implicit attitudes towards emotional regulation and improvising in the classrooms. So there was another study that I'd like to show you, which used 20-minute interventions for young people, adolescents that were suffering with complex trauma disorder. And they found that even in those 20-minute interventions, these people were able to see a difference with coherence. So that the way that their brain actually linked together, which allowed them to activate safety, to feel attunement, and to be just generally more flexible. And if your studio is anything like mine, your classrooms are like mine, you're seeing more students that are coming in with forms or signs of cognitive or complex trauma disorder. I remember when I was at Indiana, a friend of mine said she went into a lesson and she just started crying. And she said, you know, I just hate it here. And her teacher started crying too. And she says, I hate it here too. So it happens to us. We go through these things and we have to find ways to work through them. This is a picture of my kiddos at the Kennedy Center. So I know the Kennedy Center has been in the news a lot lately. We've had some changes in administration. But so far, this program is still set to go on this summer. And the way it came about was the Kennedy Center decided to do a listening tour in 2020 instead of having the program. And they went around and asked a lot of opera professionals and a lot of educational professionals, what is missing in the training for opera singers? And I was one of the people who they asked, and I let them have it in that Zoom. I was like, this needs to change, this needs to change. When I was a young artist, I didn't get this, and I didn't get this, and I needed this, and I needed that. And then a couple months later, they came back to me and they said, well, Carl, we collaborated with all of these different artists and we collated what they said into this document. And I said, told you so. And that's my favorite thing to say, by the way. And then they said, well, great. Can you fix it? And I said, huh? They're like, can you redesign this program so that it addresses all of those things that you identified as being missing? And I said, okay. I said, yes. Okay, let's figure out how to do this. And one of the things that kept coming back to me was sometimes as an artist, I felt that my humanity was always the least important part of the process. There was a product, there was a date, there was a performance, and there was a budget that was always very limited, so we had to work within those means, and if a conductor or a director was rude to you, that didn't really matter. If you did not get all the resources that you need in order to do your best things, that didn't matter. We were replaceable, and I said, in this environment, I want to make sure that humanity is at the center. Not John F. Kennedy, not Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Good job to Joe for pronouncing Galdara and Webern, by the way. Thank you, Joe. And so in order to do that, I tapped into their improvisatory skills. So what you're seeing on this screen is a sound machine. Each one of the performers were tasked with creating a sound and recreating that sound until we had a sound machine that was going on stage. You've probably seen this on YouTube clips or somewhere else in life. We spent 3 weeks putting this together by doing improvisatory games, and then they were also tasked with generating their own libretti, or the words that they would sing. They were tasked with generating the melody that they would sing as well. And I remember there's one student on here who, when we sat down to do the devising and I explained this process of creating an opera through their own ingenuity, the student said to me, "So you want us to be human AI?" And I was like, not exactly, but that's the idea. And so the results were really, really revelatory in what they were able to produce and how they were able to relate to each other. And at the end of the summer, we do a thing where we sit around in a circle and each person sits in the circle and the rest of the people tell them something wonderful that they did, something that they really loved. And it was just a really heartwarming moment to see how we were able to build community, to center humanity, all through improvisation. So, these are some ideas of how yes and, which is the golden rule of improv, can help us in the classroom, or in any space actually, in the boardroom as well. It reduces stress, improves cognitive flexibility, enhances creative problem-solving skills, and improves connection skills. So, first, before we do a little bit of yes and, I would like to do some really bad improv, which is no but, all right? So, turn to your neighbor. The premise is we're going to bake a cake. And I want you, the first person, to throw out an idea, and the response is no but. All right? Action. Great. All right. Testing, is this thing on? How did that feel? How did that feel? It felt good? It felt good? All right, now I want you to try that again. The scene doesn't go anywhere. Thank you. All right. So now we're going to try less bad improv. We're going to still try to bake that cake, but instead of no but, we'll try yes but. And action. Let me try this again. All right. So, how was that? Better? Did we get our cake? Not yet? All right. So now we'll try yes and action. right. So how did that go? Did we get some cakes baked? Excellent. So yesterday, as we were sitting in here doing our sound check, Richard was playing, and he was playing something that I'm used to hearing go like this. But yesterday, it sounded something like this. Isn't that awesome? So I love the fact that as we were sitting here, he was yes-anding himself and finding new ways, which we've got to do sometimes. We got to be our own best cheerleaders. You have to yes-and yourself. And that's the kind of idea behind this self-regulation through yes-and. As a classroom philosophy, using this can gamify brain breaks, build social emotional skills, activates cross-curricular applications, and creates trauma-sensitive environments. So let's see if we can activate this. I want to play a couple of games, but before we do that, we have to warm up. Everybody in my studio knows it's always important to warm up. So we're going to start with some primal sounds. Can I hear, what is the first sound that you did when you came onto this planet? What did it sound like? That's very kind. It probably sounded more like, ah, ah, ah. So I love a good baby cry because it activates the diaphragm and really gets the breath going. What about an owl hoot? What does that sound like? Woo, woo, woo. So there we're activating a different registration. What about vocal fry? So the thing I love about a good warm-up is it has to activate the vagus nerve. Now this is a really special nerve which starts all the way in our brain and goes down through that little hole in the diaphragm, and it innervates all of our guts and stuff, but also comes up and becomes the recurrent laryngeal nerve, which innervates our vocal folds after passing over the heart. By activating this vagus nerve, you can actually calm yourself down. Let's take a nice hum. And a hum can lower your cortisol, and it can actually lower your heart rate. So we've had our primal sound warm up, so now we're ready to follow the follower. I'd like you all to stand and find a partner. Did I hear a groan? I hope that was at your back and not me. Okay, so everybody find your partner. You gotta face your partner. Okay, so you have to designate one person as person A and one person as person B. And person B is going to lead. Person A is going to start moving in a slow, beautifully choreographed ballet. Person B is going to start moving in a slow ballet. Person A is going to follow them and do whatever they do. I'm going to mirror them. Thank you, Joe. Mirror exactly what they do. B is leading, A is following. Great. American Ballet Theater has nothing on us. All right, now person A leads, person B follows. Person A leads, person B follows. All right, now I'm not going to designate a leader or a follower. You follow the follower. Both of you move in sync, in synchrony at the same time. see some tutus in the audience. Excellent. Good, good. All right, have a seat. So, what was that experience like? What was that experience like? Fun. What connections might you make to your own domain? How might follow the follower come in handy in your specific areas? We've got some microphones up here. A thought over here? Over here?
I just groaned at the idea.
Yeah, talk to me about this groan. Where's the source of this groan?
There wasn't structure, and I'm a task person.
Okay, so we often, thank you for that. What's your name?
Joe.
Joe, is that your real name? Okay, so how often do we have to deal with ambiguity in our work? All the time. So how can we train dealing with ambiguity, even if it's a task that's really important? Perhaps that's where this exercise could come in. How can we also tune into each other and get that social emotional attunement, even when it's hard? How can we build empathy with one another, even when there are these political divides or other divides that might separate us? Perhaps there's an assignment where you can start to demonstrate and have people actually move in attunement with you. So we are built with mirror neurons, and they fire whenever anyone is in front of you. Right now, your mirror neurons are firing, and you are replicating what I'm doing in your mind's eye. Your vocal folds are actually approximating the pitches that I'm speaking right now because you're in proximity with me. That is how you can be tired at the end of the day, even if you haven't said anything, because your body is actually getting ready to say something. So these are the conditions that are part of this body that we live in, and we're finding ways to work with them to activate kind of breakthroughs. Okay, the next exercise is going to be, these are 5 things. So again, you'll need a partner. Go ahead and stand. Find a new partner. Yeah. Another groan. They didn't warn me about the groans. All right. So these are your instructions. Your instructions are to name a category. One person is going to be the category person, one person is going to be the list person, and then we'll switch. But the first person who's this category, you're going to turn to your partner and you say, Richard. We're improvising. Richard, name me 5 cities that start with C.
Ooh, Cincinnati.
1.
Columbus.
2. Just say something.
California.
3.
Christian Town.
4.
Cadillac Town.
5. Okay. Is anybody else from Cadillac Town? So Richard improvised because there was not necessarily a city that started with C at the front of his mind. So he said something, and that kept the scene going. Thank you, Richard.
Sure.
This is your task, not to hesitate, not to evaluate. It is to say something and keep it going, and your partner is going to count to 5. It does not matter if they are correct. There is no correct, really. That's a structure that we've created in our minds. And go, action. And now we'll switch. I accidentally pressed it. Good. All right. Good. You go back to your seats. Good, 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 good. All right. Actually, while some of you are standing, I would love to just have one person on each mic, just do a little bit of a share out on what that felt like, what that process was like. Yes.
We did restaurants, and they started very high in quality, and we ended at Burger King and Taco Bell.
Excellent. Which apparently Taco Bell is adding chicken nuggets to the meal. This was in my news feed. They're good. I heard they're good. I heard they're sold out. Okay. And what did we experience over here?
I just was recognizing that I became her cheerleader. I became like her hype girl.
Wow, look at that. So we can become each other's cheerleaders. We can become each other's hype people. How might you utilize this in your domains? How might this idea of perhaps creating a category or perhaps just inviting someone to say 5 things without the type of critical evaluation that we normally associate with? Yes?
The first 2 were easy, and then the next 3 I had to dig for, and you did the same thing. And I think that would make you dig beyond the first 2 patent answers that we get all the time.
Exactly. Thank you so much for that. Going beyond the patent answers, the first 2. What else?
It also helps unlock that creativity. Like if you're starting at the beginning of an idea, that whiteboarding where all things go, it's a great exercise to start there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it started off with fear, but like by the 4th and 5th item, it was fun.
Yeah. Fear to fun. The Carl DuPont method. All right. Yes.
I was going to say, with the first exercises, I was with someone I knew, and with the next exercise, I was with someone I didn't know. So it kind of created a comfort level with a stranger.
Yeah. And we know how those cliques can form, and we want that whole community in the classroom to be a part of it. Yes.
The aspect of constraint also makes you think differently. So like when you're asked to think about things that start with the letter C, for example, you're not thinking of any city, you're thinking of specific things, and that can make you bring up new ideas.
Like Cadillac Town. Okay. All right. For our last exercise, I expected to hear a groan there. No groan? Okay. For our last one, we're going to sell a blank to a blank. So give me a noun. Cookies. Give me a profession. Doctor. So how do we sell cookies to a doctor? All right, everybody, so get up, find a new partner. Find a new partner. And I want you to sell cookies to a doctor. Great. All right, yeah, we'll just switch that. All right. So, all right, you can find your seats. Go ahead and find your seats. But I'd love just 1 or 2 people to kind of share what that process was like. What was that like? Bueller? All right.
There's a weird aspect of culture because in the U.S. I'm not from the U.S., but in the U.S. you keep like selling stuff all the time.
I'm sorry.
And when you see like the last Black Mirror kind of like episode, you're like still selling stuff. So I think that chips in a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Like, you see the commercials and ads popping in.
Yes, so this exercise was actually a complex critique on the culture of America and on the consumer culture of America. And beyond that, what else did you notice? What else did you notice?
we tried to sell to our opinions of what we think doctors are kind of defined of. So it was kind of like us personally thinking about what we would assume would be something that they'd want.
You had to, exactly, thank you for that. You had to put yourself into the shoes of the other person. And you had to think what might interest them. As teachers, isn't this something that we do often? And that type of ability to change focus, to change point of view, could be really helpful in establishing cognitive flexibility. That's going to be our resource for resilience. So I'm going to give you a second just to read this quote by author Bell Hooks. And I'd like to ask you, this is the last, did I say the last one? This is the last one. I'd like you just to turn to your neighbor. You can stay seated. And I'm going to ask you two sentences. My light bulb turns on when, and then answer the question, what really activates you, enlightens you. My light bulb turns off when. So those two sentences, just with your partner in your seats where you are. We'll go into this little light now. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. All right. You all know this little light. You know how this goes. Now, Richard and I perform all over the world. Richard's headed to South Africa later this year. I've done similar programs like this in Italy, in Austria, and everywhere I go, everywhere we go, everyone is always interested in this music from that Black gospel, Black cultural experience, and they join in because that is the proper performance practice. And so as we end this session, I would like you all to stand and show that whatever turns your light bulb on, whatever inspires you, however you source resilience, however you share your message with the world, is something that you can bring, you can take out of this room, and you can take with you into all of the tasks that are in front of you. Here we go. This little light of mine, I can hear you. I'm gonna let it shine. It's okay to clap. This little light of mine, you gotta find the beat. I'm gonna let it shine, and you gotta move too. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go,
side.